Attention, bobsled riders! You will soon be embarking on a thrilling podcast down the icy slopes of the Matterhorn. So please remain seated, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the bobsled at all times. Auf Wiedersehen!
Hello, yodelers. I am your host, Jay Fifth, and we are the Matterhorn Yodelers. With us today is
Jackie.
and
A lion roar.
there's the lion. Sorry, I've been listening to a lot of NPR, and they're always all like, "Hello," and we are no. So we are here today. We are going to discuss underrated films. There's always this film that you bring up that people always forget, but then once you say it, they light up like a Christmas tree. They're like, "Oh yeah, that's real. Oh, I love that movie." Like they just stop with it, but it's like it's forgotten in the Disney parks or in reference to those like clickbait, like best Disney movies or like
They're all rubbish.
yes.
They're all rubbish. All those, they just tell you the information you already know. It's like, okay, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast.
But you still click it.
You do.
Yep.
And
'Cause
now
you
you're
wanna
going to
know.
click this underrated
That's
clickbait
right.
of an
You're
episode.
gonna be like, which ones are they gonna?
What
talk
are they
about?
going to talk about? Yes. So this is we always discuss this with Tess's family, my wife's family, where they bring up films that are just like, oh, this movie's the best in this one, and I'll be like, I don't know about that, but they bring it up and there's such passion, and so we're just going to give a couple that we kind of think that deserve a second look by some fans, or they need some recognition where people are like, yeah, I'm not alone with liking this film. Some of them may not be like underrated, but maybe forgotten.
Yes.
You know, they may have made some big money, but time has passed and they've just washed away. And I think we need to kind of brush them off and share the dime in the rough they are and make them princely. I mean, no. So we're going to first start off with Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
And what film are you first going to bring up?
So I'm gonna bring up Treasure Planet. So a lot of
So why this movie? Because this movie is notoriously like it's just like people put it in one group.
yeah, people would consider this almost a flop of a movie. But then there's also another whole side of on the internet are fans of Treasure Planet.
So the internet fans.
Yeah. It's like one of those things, like when you go to like Rotten Tomatoes, you see the critic scores go like, it was horrible, 40%, and then you see the audience, you know, and it's always like 89%. Yeah.
The Brendan Fraser group that just live and die by this.
Right.
this-
Yeah. So Treasure Planet was released 2002 in November. So this was like, this is the big,
This
like,
is Pixar movie,
this
like
is
release
big
time.
movie, holiday season. Disney's throwing out Treasure Planet. Budget was like around 140
It's a lot of
million.
money.
Gross was about 110 million.
So they lost money.
They lost money, but not like horrible compared to other movies.
Okay.
I would say. I was trying to see what other movies were coming out around this time. The closest I could see was Santa Claus 2, which did really well.
I love that movie. A lot of
second
people
one?
don't like it. I like it.
You like the second one. Okay.
Yeah.
Catch Me If You Can also was released.
That was a
Love
good.
Catch Me If You Can.
That one was a good.
That
one.
was the big hit. I mean, that was around Christmas time, but this was released end of November.
Spielberg
so.
and Tom Hanks. Oh man.
So, I mean, there were
Yeah,
some big
cash grab.
hitters there. Nothing, like, animated that was, like, competing, I would say. But Treasure Planet...
It was always one of those things on the Academy Awards. It's like, all right, who's going to win the animated Oscars? Is it going to be Pixar? Is it going to be Disney? Who's going to win? Who's going to win?
It's true. So Treasure Planet is obviously themed after the classic book Treasure Island.
Who's the author of that?
Oh.
It was like Stevenson, I think. I've read the book. He died.
Treasure
tragically.
Island?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think he died a tragic death. Like, he was in Guam and he died, or Samoa. That's what it was. Sorry, I'm rambling.
So it was Treasure Planet was a passion project for John Musker and Ron Clements, who of course are directors that were responsible for like Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Hercules, Moana. And so
You're welcome.
Yep. It's so there's a couple of things that I would say that were stand out to it. Obviously, it was. Let me see here. Okay, so it has a really strong villain, Long John Silver. It's the villain.
What makes him a good villain in this?
I felt like he had such a good character. He wasn't like 100% like, I am pure evil, bad.
I heard he has good charisma.
But like he's selfish in his own way, but then also grows an attachment to the main character.
Yeah, that's what I listened to a YouTube video about like good things about it, and he goes his mentorship of Mr. Hawkins, and how he's kind of filling in that father role and giving him a mentorship, and you get that weird Goo Goo Dolls song in there, that like feel good song. I was like, oh, this takes me back to the early 2000s with like them singing the song. So like I can see what you're saying, where he's not all bad, but he is.
So, yeah.
He's not a bad guy.
He's just bad guy.
So I think he is also considered a underrated villain.
Underrated? Wow.
Well, yeah, I mean, he doesn't show up in
He
any
doesn't show up
parades or
anywhere.
anything like that.
That's true.
So.
That would be a hard one to do. But yeah, those are my thoughts about Treasure Planet. There's a huge following about it. It was kind of like the new transition animation where they were going more
half and half.
More kind of computer operated than the hand drawing animation. And I think this is also a very popular film with the millennials.
I would say so. I know a lot of people that grew and loved this movie. They love the main character. It's still Jim, right? Jim is the main character?
Jim Hawkins.
Jim Hawkins?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I
like
don't know if it was John or Jim.
Yeah, no, sometimes they like to slightly change them. But people really relate to that sort of like angsty character personality.
Yeah.
That almost rebellious spirit. Because, like, you look at, all the old Treasure Islands or Muppet Treasure Islands, and they're still just kind of like, we're little kids. We're going to do this thing. Whereas he's got, like, he's got more depth of a character.
I can see that.
I also like the captain in the movie. It kind of brings in, like, a strong, like, female character of the captain. Which was new to Disney, I would say, like not of like the main character, but a strong supporting character.
I can see that.
So I felt like they were testing the waters of some new character development.
Character dynamics. And plus the movie follows the general theming of the original book. But
yes.
And including a what is it? A 18th century steampunk futurism style to it.
Yeah.
And that's probably another contributing factor to why it has that kind of cult following, is that steampunk tone that you see with the ships and the planet itself.
Yeah.
Well, it's just cool that you see like a classic like sail ship but in space. It's just way cool, and the graphics of it was just a new style of animation. I feel like, and I'll get into it with my other movie, but like it was a newer like genre of sci-fi animation.
That's true. This is kind of the beginning of a sci-fi animation was there ever a sci-fi
Yes.
Disney animated film,
Atlantis.
Atlantis, but prior to this new genre?
No.
Like,
Not from Disney. I know
they always stuck with a classic.
there was that one. What was it? Titan AE. Do you guys remember that one?
Yeah, but that wasn't that Fox.
That was. I think that was Fox.
Yeah.
I
that was
think.
popular.
Wonder why that one's not on Disney Plus yet.
Maybe a distribution, like maybe
Probably.
they could distribute it, but it was owned by another like.
Probably.
So that's my thoughts on Treasure Planet. Now I'll go into my second movie, which is Atlantis.
I really enjoy Atlantis.
Yes,
There
it's
was
really good.
There was a lot of excitement for this. Like, I remember there were so many shows that came out about where Atlantis could actually be and all that stuff. Like, there was, like, that movie, like, before it came out, drew some excitement over this
There was a time
history.
period with like Bermuda Triangles and so yeah, there was a lot of hype around this time period with those type of shows.
Yeah, movie came out 2001 in the summer. So this was the big summer movie of Disney.
Disney had high hopes for this movie. So
But-
much that, like, they had already
TV shows.
decided that the submarine ride was going to become the Atlantis attraction. That they even had like a banner on the thing saying like Atlantis
It
expedition,
makes sense you could do that.
Yeah.
and it lasted like 2 weeks until it.
So
Take her down quickly. What was all this?
budget was 120 million. Overall gross worldwide 186 million.
Yeah,
It's
It made money, but not as much as they
yeah,
wanted.
it's not
it.
as much as like Hercules and Mulan and Stitch, you know, and they look back. I was telling my siblings that I finished the Bob Iger, you know, biography, and he's talking about during this time period where, you know, they even consider Hercules as not a successful film, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's the best one in my book, but it's, you know, from a company standpoint, money,
Yep.
and, like merchandise and
Mhm.
park, you know, influences.
that's why you're not going to see a Hercules attraction anytime soon.
Yes.
Well, in other movies that came out around this time, Cats and Dog, which did better.
Oh gosh.
Cats and Dogs. I actually remember that movie.
I remember it, yeah.
I remember going to see that movie, and I remember that movie actually was funny.
Yeah.
At least when I was that age. I don't know about now, but
And then, of course, Monsters Inc. came out that year, but a little bit later in
Usually
the
in
year.
November.
But yes, so this was the first science fiction animated movie that Disney came out with.
Kind of playing off the Jules Verne kind of style.
yes.
Yeah, I think, and it was released a year before Treasure Planet, so I'm sure there was a little bit of similar
I can see that.
work, animation probably the working together on that.
Yeah, you can see the CGI work in both of those movies are fairly similar looking.
And then some of the main points that really stood out to me was the princess that's in it. It's Kida or Kida?
Yeah, Kida.
Kida.
I just remember Spock's voice as like the dad,
Oh yeah, the chief or whatever. Yeah.
Mhm.
Leonard Nimoy.
So she's like one of the first princesses that doesn't need no man. She took care of herself.
Girl power.
She was full on girl power. She was probably one of the first independents.
Why couldn't they sell the crystals? Those would have been really cool merchandise.
I'm
to
sure they
sell.
did.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Like it lights up or something.
I remember actually they would have it in like cereal boxes.
They may have.
Because I remember having one.
Oh.
Okay.
So
I was 16 at the time, so it's like it's really hard to get into Disney movies when you're like Fast and the Furious is coming out,
Yes.
and so like I was into like those type of movies. So at the time it was hard for me to get into Disney movies.
What?
I
I
was-
didn't have a problem with
Yeah,
that.
I did. There's periods of time where I'm like, I never saw this movie until I was in my like mid-20s when, like, oh, let's watch this movie. Okay, and then you're like, wow, that was really good. Why didn't I see this when it first came out? And so
You got caught by the stigma of, oh, it's a Disney movie, it's for kids.
but like we would still go to the movie theaters, but I just don't remember going to these movie theater like showings for Treasure Planet.
We didn't. I don't remember so
Okay.
much. Like, I remember, like, yeah.
Yeah, I
don't
think during
remember
that time we were more like the dollar theater.
We have Poe. Dollar store.
No, it wasn't even that. I think,
don't think so.
well, this was an era of Disney animation that really wasn't that
We went to
great.
Pixar. I remember going
We
to
went
all
to
the Pixar.
Yes, we did all the Pixar ones. That was always, but like the Disney animated ones weren't doing so
Again,
good.
this
We
was-
got Home on the Range. How excited were we about Roseanne the cow?
This was a
That's true.
time, I would say, of a transition period of Disney and animation.
Yes, that is agreed upon by
Mm.
everybody.
we are no longer in the Renaissance era.
The
Yes.
second golden age. Is that what they refer
I
to
don't
it?
know what the era is called now. I forgot what they call
So this
it.
is called the Dark Age. Dark
No,
Age
the
2,
the Dark Age would be considered the
post,
70s.
yeah,
The 70s would be considered the Dark Ages.
yeah, where you end with Black Cauldron.
Black Cauldron would be probably the
as dark
end,
as you're
yeah.
gonna get with those movies.
And I also loved Milo in Atlantis because he was like that Indiana Jones, but probably more realistic. Very like in the books and.
More like an Indiana Jones fan, not Indiana Jones. All right, let's take it easy with that. But yes, he is kind of that academic, but the one that we all like. If you were like a nerd seeking adventure, you would want to be like Indiana Jones. But yeah, he's the fan.
He's
seeking
the
adventure.
fanboy. So like,
Yeah.
think about the fandom you're excited about, and you got taken on this historical journey on your fandom, and you're like, "Ooh, this is what connects it." It's like when you watch a new Marvel movie, and you're like, "Oh, this connects to this and that and this." Oh,
And
look
then your
at all
wife's
we're
like,
gonna-"
I don't get it.
right?
It's like that.
Yeah.
So when I watch Star Wars, I have to explain everything.
Yep.
So I think, and now you can only meet like Milo and Kita, and probably, is that right?
Yeah, I think it's key.
Okay. At like Halloween parties, Christmas parties,
Yeah.
That'd be a fun
The
movie.
the special
parties.
meet and greets.
You have
But
to pay extra to see these characters that nobody paid to go see in the movie theater.
I mean, I would say most kids probably have never seen this movie. Have your kids seen this movie, Peter?
getting closer to the
Atlantis.
age.
Atlantis. I know my wife has put
Okay.
on. Treasure Planet, no, but Atlantis, yes. Did they sit through it? No, I don't think they did sit through it. Me and my wife sat through it. But I don't
Well,
think the kids
and-
did.
I was also reading these movies. I think they were leaning more towards adults than kids.
I get the sense this was. I mean, my wife calls these are boy movies,
Yeah.
and that's why it doesn't resonate with her. And some of them are just like, oh, that's a boy movie. Like I'll be like, oh, I like Aladdin, boy movie. Oh, I like Hercules, boy movie. You know, there's just, you think of like, oh, Princess of the Frog, girl movie. You know,
Beauty
so
and
like
the Beast,
they were.
Rapunzel.
You had themes and they had target audience, and maybe they chose the wrong audience group with this one.
Yeah. So those were my two movies.
Yeah, I like the Atlantis movie. I try to watch Treasure Planet, and I've read the original Treasure Island book, and I've watched Muppets Treasure Island, and it's just so hard not to compare. And so when you compare, you're gonna steal
You're just gonna
the
go,
joy out of watching the movie you're watching, because you're just like, oh, they did it better here, and like, that's not a very good Kermit, or like,
Right.
that's not a very good Long John. Like, what about this scene? They totally could, that would have been good here, and it's kind of hard with,
Where's Cabin
Rapunzel.
Fever? Come on.
yeah, I've got to do, like, so like that's what was really hard for me from finish this movie. But I've been told by multiple fans that they love Treasure Planet, and so I miss it, but it doesn't mean that it's not an underrated film.
Yep.
It's got a following. All right. Thank you, Jackie. Now, Peter, you're going to share us the lion that you have introduced in this show.
That's the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That's right. I'm going to be talking about the Chronicles of Narnia.
Chronicles of Narnia.
That's right. I actually went back and watched that SNL skit.
Because I brought it up during the meeting.
You brought it up, and I was like, okay, I gotta watch this now. And it's a skit where they talk about them going to go see the Chronicles of Narnia. It's a silly SNL skit. But so for those that do not know, the Chronicles of Narnia, it's based off of a book series written by C.S. Lewis. The first one that was made was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Then we went to Prince Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Trotter. Then we went to I think he made The Silver Chair next, and then I'm trying to remember the Horse and His Boy, and The Last Battle. I think my dad will probably correct me when
It's
we're done
one
with
of
this.
his
But
favorite books.
it was his, yeah, absolutely, and that's how I got introduced to it. I learned about this series because he introduced it to me. He said, hey, I need to do a book report. And he says, why don't you read this one? So I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And it was a great book. And I read up to Voyage of the Dawn Trotter, which, by the way, is my favorite book. But who was it? It was Walden Media was the ones who were making the movie. And so they went to Disney to distribute and produce the movie. It's a movie that the first one, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, which came out in 2005. And keep in mind the novel was written back in 1950. So we're talking.
So you got a lot of people who were affected by this book series.
Correct. And this is in the era of Harry Potter and a lot of these. It was in this era of books turning into movies.
Yes.
And Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, yep. And so you've got all this a lot of these book fans are like, hey, the movie isn't as good as the book. Well, when it comes to this series, I honestly feel like the movies do the books justice. Because they are more simple books, they're children's books. So they're able to hit on all the details that's found in the books within the movies without having to skip several things. And so that's where I feel like this series of movies did really well at, is they were able to portray what happened in the books properly. In fact, in some ways, in consideration for Prince Caspian, I think they did a better job than the book. But it's the story starts with 4 siblings. You got Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, who they get taken out of London because of the London Blitz during World War II when Germany was bombing London. So they got shipped out to the countryside to stay at this man's mansion.
A recluse of a man.
Yes. And so
The
the professor, they call him the professor.
Yes.
And they're not allowed to touch anything, but eventually they end up walking through this mysterious trying to hide in this mysterious wardrobe, and end up being teleported and taken into this land called Narnia. And it's about their adventure where they meet the White Witch and they meet Aslan the Lion, and learn about their role in the land of Narnia, that they were foretold to come, sort of a prophecy sort of stuff here. So the story's really good. It's a story that's written back 1950s. So and it still has a strong fan base today. So you can tell it's a good story because the story's lasted this long. There are hundreds of stories that were written that nobody cares about today, that were written 5 years ago.
My wife said that it has a strong Christian. I haven't watched the movies or read the books, but she goes, it has a very strong Christian theming, and so that allows to really, and it's not over the top, but it's just enough to where you can see the parallels that she was saying with it, and where it can really just be passed down, especially with families looking for good content,
Yeah.
and
good media.
And C.S. Lewis, he is a Christian writer, but that actually was not his intention
Yeah,
when he wrote this
It's
series.
not, but it's
he
hard
just
for it to manifest.
correct, and like he goes, I didn't mean for there to be connections, but there just happened to be connections
It's
to.
like George Lucas, like, well, there's some Buddhism with the Jedis and
Right.
stuff like it, but he
Yeah.
didn't write it for that purpose. You could just see it.
Correct. So like if you're a Christian, you'll get a connection, seeing the connection, and even if you're not, you can still enjoy the story as is because that doesn't really impact the
Yeah.
story at all.
No.
So it's a great story in the end. You know, spoiler: the kids win, and then they get.
Would have been a tragic book series
Yeah.
after
I
that.
know, right? They die.
Next one, the parents
book.
are digging the dead bones out of Narnia and bringing them back.
So that movie did really well. It did well enough that Disney wanted to do a sequel. So the budget for this one was $180 million. Worldwide, it grossed $745 million.
Yeah.
Very
I remember the
successful,
first one
yes.
doing really well. I was recommended it by some of the employees, and they're like, "Oh, it's really good. You should see it." And I just never got around to it. It's just, again, I was a little older.
They had when I was working at Disney, they even had a little mini Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, little
Kind of like a cutout or display.
Like
kind of
Cardboard,
like
like-
mini show
Oh.
where like you actually got to walk through the wardrobe into Narnia, into the snow Narnia,
Oh.
and the witch would like threaten you, and then you would leave, and that was it. It was just this little like.
Must be the
you're
best
in
job.
Narnia.
You
promo.
threaten people and then they have to leave.
It was this like thing that Disney did a lot. They did that with Pirates. I think I was there when they transitioned that to the next Pirates, where they had Jack Sparrow do a similar thing. You walk through and you're in the Pirates world, and Jack Sparrow talks to you. But back to Narnia. So it was a success, and so Disney's all like, "Go ahead and make another one." So they went to the next book, Prince Caspian, which is with the same four kids, where they get taken back into the land of Narnia. And they realize it's not the same Narnia as when they left. That a lot of the magic has been gone, and so that they've actually been gone for hundreds of years. So a lot of time has passed since they've been in this world, even though to them it's only been a short time. And so where they meet Prince Caspian, who's a prince amongst this people who kind of colonized into Narnia, who've kind of conquered it a little bit. But then, mayhem pursues. His life gets threatened by his own people, his uncle, sort of like a Hamlet situation where, the uncle killed the prince's dad. And then as soon as the uncle had a kid, he tried to kill Prince Caspian. So Prince Caspian, he runs out to the forest, meets all the Narnians, which he didn't know still existed. He thought they all went extinct. And so he was able to raise an army, and they were able to win the day.
Sounds like an exciting.
It's an exciting adventure story. And so this one, bigger budget. $225 million.
Ooh.
Okay. Their
What was the
gross
return?
419.
Okay.
So
They double is good, but with 200, they really want 3 or 4 times.
correct.
Yes.
And so with the results of this, Disney backed out of doing the third one. So Walden Media went to Fox.
How funny.
Isn't that funny? It went to Fox, and so Fox produced Voyage of the Dawn Trotter, which instead of we lose 2 of the kids that were in the prior 2.
Did they die in the war?
No, they just they no longer were needed in Narnia anymore. So Peter and Susan, the oldest, they are not in this movie. Only Lucy and Edmund. And their cousin,
That's right.
what's his name?
Oh, he was so annoying.
For good reason. That was his role. He had a weird name. What's his name? Eustace. what's his name?
Useless.
Yeah, pretty much. He's just this whiny kid that's just like, oh, I don't want to be here, man. And even in the books, you're like, oh, can this kid just get eaten by a dragon already? Like you feel that way. And you know what? The actor does a good job.
That could be
of
an attraction
portraying
at the new Dino Land you
That's
proposed,
right.
right? Eat useless.
Listen to last week's episode.
Yay! And they rejoiced.
But like it's a fun adventure where they're on the search for like these the Council of Narnia with Prince Caspian. So they're going to all these different islands outside of Narnia to find all these people. And you know, obviously this one has a lot more like smaller plots along the way. You can tell like this one was more
like sub-journeys and stuff
yeah,
like
it's
that.
like a lot of sub-journeys instead of like a massive quest like the other ones were. So this one was just a lot more fun. You got side stories here or there, which were cool. So that one, budget 150, and that one came out, so the last one came out in 2008, and then The Voyage of the Dawn Treader came out in 2010. The budget on this one was 155 million, so smallest budget out of the three, and the return was 415.
It's a good return.
So I mean, it did decent, but not well enough that Fox wanted to continue.
No, they had to make really bad X-Men movies.
Yeah, they had to make bad
Yes.
X-Men movies. Yep. And eventually the deal with C.S. Lewis's estate had ended with Walden Media, and so now I think the movie rights belong to MGM,
Which is now owned, or they're in the process of being owned by Amazon.
something like that. And so like right now, like there's been talks about them rebooting the series, but starting with
The beginning.
the Silver Chair, which is actually like the story before The Lion Witch and the Wardrobe. But that's been, again, keep in mind, they've been working on this since the last movie came out, which was in 2010.
decade ago.
So, and
Yeah.
MGM's got a lot going on, right?
well, like they said there's some deal with Netflix, but they said in May of 2020 that they said Netflix has not contacted them about their movie
They're
series.
too busy making other content.
Right. So
Like The Circle.
Yes.
the reason, like these movies, the series were great. Like they had great actors. They had Liam Neeson playing Aslan the lion. You know, like
Wherever you are, I will find you.
I will eat your face.
This is Narnia. Release the Kraken.
You got Tilda Swinton who plays the White Witch. She just, it's so funny because she's only really in like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but they kept bringing her back because she was such a good villain in The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, and so they just brought any excuse to bring her back because she was that good. Ben Barnes as Prince Caspian, and then other...
I got Professor Xavier. He was the goat guy.
Yes, James
Oh, yes.
McAvoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Tumnus. And then you had been Simon Pegg. He was a character. So, like, there was a lot of people in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, if you watch it today, the CGI and the computer effects, like, they still hold up pretty well.
That's a big problem
Yeah.
with movies with CGI. Is you watch them, you're gonna be like,
you
gotta
can
kind of
tell
have to overlook some of it.
most of the money went into that because it still looks good. Like you can definitely tell the difference between Aslan in the first movie and the second movie, but you can tell like for the most part it still holds up pretty well. A lot of the CGI and the story's really good. It's really engaging. It was one of those. I wasn't even like when we first came up with this idea for this podcast. I didn't know what direction to go. Should I go animated? Should I go retro? Should I go like the computer that wore tennis shoes sort of stuff? But then my wife, she put on
Chronicles of Narnia.
Narnia. Yeah, she actually put on Prince Caspian, and I go, you know what? These were really good movies, and
They need the spotlight again.
they need the spotlight again, and they even have a special episode in the prop show.
Oh, yes.
I forgot what that was called.
Pop culture.
Prop culture.
Prop
That's
culture,
it. Prop
that's
culture. They had an episode where they talked about the props from the Chronicles, from the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was cool to see the children, now adults,
seeing their outfits.
or holding their
Aw.
swords and shields. And like Peter, the actor, what's his name? William Mosley or Moses. I don't know how to say his name, but he picked up his sword and goes, "I remember this being a lot heavier." So it was a great series. I recommend anyone to put it on. It's great for kids of all ages. My kid, it held his attention. My oldest, so it's a great movie for the family, and I think it deserves a second look. Especially if you've seen the first one, maybe not the others, they're worth a second look.
Yeah.
Awesome. I haven't seen them. My wife gets started, and I got a small kid, so she just distracts from us finishing movies sometimes. But she raves about it. She likes it. So I think it's good. All right, so it's my turn. Let's see. I'm going to discuss Mr. Holland's Opus. Do you remember these films?
I remember watching it when I was in college.
Okay.
I watched it on
so.
a rainy day schedule at school.
It wasn't on the laser disc of the 3D thing that gives you anxiety and haunts your dreams. Okay, so I think I remember seeing it relatively. I think we rented it or something like that. We went to Blockbuster, the historic Blockbuster,
man.
or Video Update.
It was a Hollywood Video.
Hollywood, Video.
That was
or-
ours.
We would go
Hollywood.
once in a while to Blockbuster.
Not too
Well,
long.
it
Not too
was
often.
Blockbuster near us, and then they closed down, and there was Hollywood Video store.
There was a Video Update. Okay, well, despite that, we rented Mr. Holland's Opus. And so the premise of the story, I'll tell it. It came out in 1996. Budget was only $31 million, and it did really well. It got $106 million, so 3 times your investment. And that's why we have a 6-movie deal about his different opuses. No, he only did 1 movie. So the premise of it. It starts in the mid '60s with Glenn Holland. He is a talented musician who's kind of struggling being on the road. He's got a significant other. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to do this so I can have time to write my masterpiece, my classical piece that's going to make us famous, and it's going to get us in, in the musical world, because he's playing clubs and on the road and stuff like that in the 50s. And so he's struggling to get his breakthrough, and he's like, you know what? In college I got my teaching certificate, so I'm going to use this. And then in the summertime, or in the evenings, I'll just work on my music. And in the summer, I'll have 3 months to just work on my music. And he starts there, and he's kind of that teacher's like, I don't want to be there. And so he just sneaks in and kind of like, all right, open your books. What is the definition of music? When you have a teacher start off, you're like, this is going to suck. Everybody has that either in a school setting or maybe even a church setting. It's like, open up your manuals. Okay, we're just winging it today, aren't we? So it's kind of that thought with the teacher. And he's first one to get out. And as he's getting into this teaching rhythm, his wife announces, I'm pregnant. And then he goes, okay, I guess I'll stay here a little bit longer. And so a temporary job and side projects really sucks him into this world of teaching. And it slows him's dream of producing this beautiful piece. And as he's his teacher, he's affecting the lives of different students that he's not really intentionally trying to, but he sees that they need his help, and he goes the extra step. Instead of just writing them off like most society would in the situation, he just goes a different angle, a different way of teaching. He has his child, finds out he is deaf. It's devastating for him because his whole world, Mr. Holland, his whole world is music. It's listening and just the stimulation of this beautiful art, and he can't share this with his child. And so he has, there's these heartbreaking moments where, he can't communicate with his child. And this is the 60s, 70s time period where the science with speech and hearing are my wife was watching this and she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said to do that. Like there were just moments because my wife is going into this field of study and she's just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that. That's the worst thing you could do. And so you're seeing this struggle with this family and this guy who's he's got his dream and teaching was his dream job, but it's a job and it pays for the house that provides for his family, and so you're seeing the struggle, and eventually the relationship grows with his son as they start to connect at different levels, and 30 years go on while he's at this high school, and it's just the mid 90s at this time when the high school's like, you know what, we gotta just focus on math and science, cutting the arts out. And at that point he's like, well, I'm forced into mandatory retirement. And he gets the feeling like, what was it for? It's not even appreciated. And it ends in a really heartfelt moment where there's all his former students, they get the music from his wife, this opus that he had been working on all his life, and he conducts it, and his former students and current students kind of play this beautiful piece. I think it's one of the students, they say, we are the symphony, Mr. Holland. We are the melodies and the notes of your opus. We are the music of your life. And in that note, it kind of just sends chills of like, yes, you go down this path thinking you're going to do this and it's going to make you famous, but instead your impact goes beyond what your dreams could ever go and changing the lives of these students. And it's a beautiful message. And this movie kind of starts the theme of these feel-good movies with Disney. You get Remember the Titans and Radio. And so because of the success of this movie, it steamrolls this feel-good, almost Hallmark-esque kind of movie trend until, these movies, people are just like, oh, okay, we've seen this before, triumph over tragedy, and here we are. But Mr. Holland's Opus, if you just want that feel-good movie, it's kind of just been put on the shelf and forgotten. And, again, this movie came out 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. The movie came out in 96, and to talk about a movie in the 60s, and now we're almost 30 years later talking about that same movie where the next music teacher is retiring and they're doing his opus. So it's a beautiful movie about the teachers and the impact in our lives and the speech community with his son. It just has so many good messages. And I remember there were moments where I was just getting up and I was cleaning. I was like, why do you keep getting up and cleaning? I'm like, I just don't want to keep crying in this movie. So it's just one of those, it's a feel-good movie. It's
being
just
a
good.
parent hits you hard now on these
it
movies.
It just
now,
hits these things harder now. And you're like, gosh, dang it! Why are you just so good at hitting those emotional strings?
Why do I have to have kids now? I can't watch movies anymore.
Yes, so true. Okay. And the next movie I have is called Meet the Robinsons. It's an animated feature film by Disney and kind of like this rocky period that people like to poo-poo on. But I think this is one of those little
it's a movie that's totally forgotten.
It's a hidden gem.
It really is.
It's a hidden gem.
I mentioned what I was doing, what this theme of what this podcast was, and I told my wife, I'm watching, I'm going to do Meet the Robinsons. Oh, are we going to watch it? And I'm like, no, I'm just getting little scenes that I want to write notes on. I'm just like, oh, I really like that movie. I could stop and watch that movie. And I'm like, and that's why I'm picking it. It just stops you and it just gives you hope. It's as if you're watching Walt Disney. I
think that's the direction. That was the direction they were kind of going.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Walt Disney quotes, a lot of hidden Easter eggs that connect the dots to Walt Disney.
And so it just, as watching it as an adult, because I didn't see it in the theater, because it came out in 2007.
You're in the military.
I was in another country, and there's just this period of movies where I just never saw. I remember getting, it was 2009, I watched Ratatouille and going, that movie was amazing, And unfortunately, this movie does have to compete with CGI in that same year. So Meet the Robinsons, its budget, $150 million, seems kind of normal, very close to Treasure Planet. Its box office, only $170 million. So, and the investment of that money, and only come about with $20 million, it's just not a good good thing right there, starting off. And you look at the CGI, you look at it now and you're like, oh, I'd see this on my kid's TV show or on my Cocomelon kind of like cartoonish. The CGI doesn't really hold up.
No.
And it's hard not to like I said, Ratatouille came out the same year, and you look at Meet the Robinsons and you're just like, ooh, we are behind. And as I said, I read the Bob Iger biography, and this is the period where Bob Iger, the president, is trying to bring Pixar back because he sees Pixar is doing great and doing awesome things. And he was like, we need this. We need what they're doing in our animation studios. And he could just tell, like, we are behind.
So do you think the animation held
I think
it
it's
back?
behind. It may. It's a, and then we're going into the story of the plot. It's a plot that you have to follow. What I have to say about it, it's like Back to the Future meets the Matrix, kind of in the theme, like the darkness with the AI, the artificial intelligence with Doris, the top hat. So it kind of has the bowler hat. And so we'll start with the theme or with this plotline. Lewis, he is the main character, or Cornelius. He's 12 years old, orphan. He's an inventor. He just fails, and he's just trying to build these things so he can get parents. And he's just not finding the success. He's always failing and making a mess, and he's hard on himself. But an evil saboteur comes back in time from the future to interrupt this science fair where he has this breaking invention that allows you to reach back in your memories to see, visualize it on like a television screen. He's doing this so he could see his parent or his mother before she, or just to see her, just to know what she looked like. And so, like, the saboteur ruins Lewis's demonstration, throwing the future off. Wilbur, his son from the future, comes in trying to find the time machine, picks up Lewis, and, they end up crashing in the future in 2037. And Lewis is trying to fix things, and while he gets to meet Wilbur's family, which is actually his future family. Like I said, it's a little complicated.
Yes.
And so
time travel is complicated?
Yes. And so this does get...
Where's the timekeeper?
Yeah, where's the timekeeper or the variant police from Loki? Yes, where is that? And so you're going through this whole journey with the evil saboteur bowler hat guy who is really Goobs, his old roommate, who's upset and fixated on revenge for ruining his life because he missed the catch because he was asleep, because Lewis was working all night on the invention that was supposed to change his life, and it does change the future and makes him this world famous. He gets the ball going to becoming a world famous inventor, and in the end, we find out that the bowler hat that he's wearing was actually an invention by Lewis, who was mad and wanted revenge on Lewis, and he changes time, and he creates this Matrix-like world where the humans are just used for the bowler hats to continue this bleak world. It's just there's parts where it's like, oh wow, this is dark, I didn't realize there was
it takes a dark turn.
There's an artificial intelligence, darkness about it, and so as we get now closer to like more algorithm AIs, you're just like, oh boy, where's the bowler hat with like the scary, claws coming out? So you go through this. There's fun characters in this movie. Like I said, was it Doris? Doris. Like I can't. That's an O, not an E. Okay, Doris, the bowler hat. I think you're so fixated on Goobs, the bad guy, but it's like, no, Goobs is just the vehicle for the hat, and so you learn that, and you have the dinosaur chasing them with the big head that just brings a little comic relief here and there.
I have a big head and
little arms, and he's doing it with this dinosaur voice, Yeah. Doesn't have the tongue articulation that we do to two-speaker language, right? I like Goobs. I loved it when he's like he opens up and he's wearing his old uniform. And
Right.
he's like Goobs. He just never got over it, and I just like the theme or I loved when they do the flashback where it's like. Like everyone's like, "Hey, Goobs, what's going on, Goobs?" And he's like, "They all hated me," and he just was so fixated on like the negativity of it, and it kind of brings up the keep moving forward is the big message. Before I get into that, I like the message where there's this example of this person inventing things and failing forward with the family, where they're just all like they celebrated his failure. Lewis is going to fix the peanut butter and jelly machine, and when it fails, Lewis is like, "Oh, I failed again," and the family's like, "Oh, you did it! You failed! Good job! You'll get him next time." It was just like the encouragement he needed, or just the perspective of like, "Oh my gosh, failure's not a bad thing."
It's a very similar thought process that Elon Musk has when he does things. Like people ask him, like, "Oh, your rocket exploded." He goes, "Good, because now I know not to do that again." Now I don't have to worry about making that same mistake again.
He watched Meet the Robinsons.
He watched Meet the
He was
Robinsons.
like, "Oh, this
Yeah,
movie
inspired.
speaks to me, right?" And I think get the message, where it's like you can invent a new world for, as a kid. You don't have to rely on an adult to tell you or, give you products for you to consume. It's like you can be an inventor. You can be a producer in this world. And like I remember growing up and
It's
everybody's
okay
like,
to fail.
it's okay to fail. That's a huge one. A lot of people deal with perfectionism issues and going back with kids, I remember growing up and I was like, I want to be an architect, and people were like, oh, I want to be a bus driver, and like, well, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be the Imagineer.
He wanted to be an Imagineer. What did you want to be,
I
Jackie?
wanted to be a waiter.
There you go. You wanted to be a waiter.
And your dream was fulfilled, right?
Kind of.
yeah, you got into that
Kind of,
field.
yeah.
But everyone had this dream of producing stuff. You ask kids now, it's like, what do you want to be? All of them were like, YouTube star.
Oh, YouTube.
Oh, YouTube star. I want to be YouTube
I
star.
want to be an influencer.
I want to be in it. It's like nobody wants to make anything besides YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, this message really resonated. With 2007, YouTube was just...
I know. Who wants to
You have
grow
like
up?
the Generations of Dance dude was like #1
Oh,
video.
I remember
Right?
that.
It was red hat, orange shirt, and he's just there doing his like...
Who wants to grow up and do podcasts for a living? I mean, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Everybody now. So like it hits me now going, oh wow, they were really setting up a new generation like, hey, invent, think, create. Just don't consume.
That brings up a memory of mine. It was like in school, our teacher was like, okay, you have to invent something. Come up with an invention. And I thought this was like the biggest invention because I was like, with like paper lunch sacks and how they never had handles on them, like your lunch paper sack bags. And so I made little handles for my paper sack bags, and I was so proud of it, but no one was impressed. But I was like, this is the best invention ever.
You know, people would buy that totally.
Yeah. I mean, there's like, I remember doing the invention aspect in like, I think it was 5th grade. It was all like, how do you take thumbnail, or how do you take like thumbtacks out? And I remember just like, thumbnails get under, or the tacks would get underneath your fingernails and
the
like
flat
separate,
ones.
and you're trying to peel them off, and I created something that popped them off and stuff. I kind of ripped it off the guy that had the soda pop can thing, but I was like, well, I'll do something that hurts my fingers, not soda cans and stuff. But
Who works their hand on a soda can?
weak links, but it was for women with like breaking their fingernails, and that's what it was. He was good. Daniel Brooks, you got it. I stole your idea, and that's why I got a D.
Well, there was also another movie that came out, not too long after that had that similar thought process.
Stealing Daniel Brooks's
No,
inventions.
about creating, which was Tomorrowland.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, like it was a very similar vibe where like you were meant to be inspired to go and create and do things, which it's hard to find that motivation to make people do that now.
Yeah, come on, Imagineers. 1996 Tomorrowland's calling. So going back to the general themes, it ends, like you always said, keep moving forward.
Yes.
it's all based around like a Walt's quote, and we'll kind of finish up with this. Around here, this is a Walt quote. Around here, however, we don't look backwards for very long. We keep moving forward, opening up new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. And like you hear that and you watch the movie, it just gives you a good feeling of like, hey, there's never, I can just look forward or try to create something new, when inspired. You have your father-in-law and he's an inventor and how he just lights up, and you never hear anybody like, oh, he's an inventor. That's what I always think that's cool when you hear that, and so I definitely think about that, and like we need more inventors. We don't need more content. Except if you're Disney, give me more.
Like and subscribe.
Please, we don't need any more. Stop listening to us. Please share. Yes. No. So there's just as we as a podcast, we're moving forward. We've hit the year mark. We're slowly trying to figure out what we can do to make things better. With that being said, please reach out to us and our social medias. And comment on movies that you think are underrated. That hey, this was a good movie. Like some of the considerations I thought was like Gus, the donkey,
the field goal kicking donkey. Yes,
1976. If you want a weird movie that kind of makes you chuckle.
It's especially like you got that whole.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
They've got this whole chase scene where they're chasing this donkey in a grocery
store.
I
love
it. It's funny.
It's just like why did we think that was good in the 70s? But it is just silly.
It's silly, and sometimes that's what we need. We need a little silly.
And like you got another one was like Heavyweights, and that's one of those.
My wife just watched that one for the first time, and she's like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, my wife did the same thing. It just. Underrated for some, overrated for others.
Enchanted.
Yeah.
I would feel like an underrated one.
It was big.
They're making a sequel.
For Disney Plus, yeah. Disenchanted.
Yes.
That is what it's called.
How creative.
I know.
So with that saying, just reach out to us. Let us know what is, underrated to you that deserves, a spotlight. And, all our viewers will see the comments and like it. And we'll all rejoice and be happy. Again, follow us on our different social medias and listen to our past podcasts. Like I said, we've got a year's worth. We got like 50 plus.
We haven't missed a week.
So we're doing good. If you have any ideas of podcasts, we're pretty good about coming up with ideas, but we love incorporating your guys' ideas. We've done it with 3 or 4 or something like that, 2 or 3. So once again, just communicate to us and we'll get to it for sure. With that being said, Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Matterhorn Yodelers. Please remember, before your bobsled comes to a complete stop, to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And remember...
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.